When Brandon was probably 13 or 14 years old, he decided he wanted to become a police officer. And he lived his life accordingly. He didn't go out partying with his friends. He wanted to make sure that he was a very law-abiding citizen and could get into the police academy. His dreams came true. And Brandon was given a project in a very rough area of town in Mesa, and was given a project to get rid of the drug dealers and the homeless people and clean up a park that was down in this neighborhood where a lot of illegal aliens live in Mesa. And he took the project head on, and he became a modern day beat cop. He went door to door and met everybody who lived down there. And he cleaned up the park. He got the homeless people to shelters. He got the drug dealers out of there. He had the trees trimmed up to where police had visual of the park. The neighborhood was able to reclaim the park as their own. Families are picnicking, children are playing basketball. Families are gathering there as it should have been for all those years. And people there absolutely loved my son. Mothers would invite him into their homes for dinner. He took it upon himself to look after elderly who lived in the area, and if they were having health struggles, he would call their children who lived out of the area to let them know, you need to come check on your parents. On May 12, 2014, I was woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning by a phone call from Afghanistan for a fellow officer of Brandon's who was also an Air National Guard and was deployed to Afghanistan. And he told me, Mom, Brandon's been in a terrible accident. And I said, I have to go. And I kept trying to call Brandon's phone and he wasn't answering. And about 15 minutes later, the Mesa Police Department showed up at my door and said, we need to take you to the hospital. So they took me down to the Maricopa County hospital, and my son was in surgery. And I still didn't know what had happened. And then I found out that a drunk, repeat illegal alien criminal in our country who had been shown leniency, didn't show up for court dates, had been back and forth across the border, was apprehended at the border, taken back to Colorado to face his charges, was shown leniency by a judge and released back out onto our streets without being deported. He'd been driving over 35 miles the wrong way, over 3 times the legal limit drunk and high on meth, and slammed head on into my son on his way home from work that night. So Brandon succumbed to his injuries while he was in surgery, and it was, 6 hours after I had had dinner with him on Mother's Day, my last Mother's Day with him. Brandon was an incredible man and an amazing son and a very compassionate police officer, and it was a huge loss not only to me but to the whole community. After Brandon was killed, I had several children come up to me and say, who's going to buy us Dairy Queen? Who's going to buy us pizza? He would go on his days off and go play kickball in the park with the children and buy the winning team, Dairy Queen, pizza, whatever. Took his time to explain to these children the importance of education, staying out of trouble, and making something of their lives. I had a young man approach me after his death telling me, your son single-handedly saved my life. I came out of jail and nobody wanted to have anything to do to me, and your son took the time to tell me that my life mattered and what I did with it from this point forward mattered. And he said, your son was my saving grace. I can't even tell you how many stories I've heard from people like this. He was killed in May, and he had already bought 3 bicycles for 3 grandchildren that grandparents were raising in that neighborhood. And Christmas of that year, the police department presented those children with those bikes that Brandon had already bought for them for Christmas. My son is my inspiration. My son was 32 years old when he was killed, and his dreams were shattered that day, as were mine. I found out probably 4 or 5 days after Brandon was killed that it was an illegal alien in the country who had killed my son. And after a few weeks, after the funeral, and after my head was cleared somewhat that I could think, I started doing research on the amount of crimes that illegal aliens commit in our country. I knew they were bad in Arizona. I'd gone on ride-alongs with my son. My son was very aware of the crimes that illegal aliens commit in our country, but I started doing my own independent research. I was mortified. The illegal alien who ran head-on into my son was killed instantly in the accident. Quite frankly, I thank God that I was spared what some of these other families have had to go through. The illegal alien being released and fled to Mexico, or they're somewhere in the United States and can't be found. So if there's anything to be thankful for, it's that I didn't have to deal with the aftermath and a trial and the ugliness that comes along with that. I'm appalled when an American takes the time to tweet to me, a mother who's lost her son, F you and F your pig son. calling me a Nazi hater, a racist. My son was half Hispanic, you know, and I have my ex-husband's family backing me up 100% on this fight. Their ancestors came here the legal way. They know the process. And so at times it's very hard to read that kind of stuff, but then I get an email or a message from somebody that says, I can't believe your heartfelt story, and I have to tell you what happened to me. And I've been able to help draw somebody out of the shadows to share their story, that they feel comfortable enough to share that with me, to be able to add them to the statistical numbers that are happening, because they aren't counted. And so those are the kind of stories that make up for 500 ugly tweets, you know, or messages directed at me. If one person is helped, or one person comes out of the shadows, and I feel like my message has helped and my son's life mattered enough that it gave me the strength to help this person have the strength to tell their story, then this has all been worth it. And the hate directed at me, I don't care.